So the very first element of our song that we are going to mix is the kick, because it's the underlying foundation of any EDM track. And after we've done the gain staging, the first stage is to do what I like to call anchor the kick. And that is basically where we set the kick to be bouncing at around -18 dBFS on the master channel, and then we leave it for the rest of the mix as much as possible. And this means that if we want the kick to sound louder in the mix, we have to lower the volume of all the other elements. And instead of just pushing that kick up in the mix to try and make it punch through, which will just clog up our headroom and mean that we can't get a loud master, or worse still, we're going to get clipping if we keep pushing up all the levels. So we'll anchor the kick and then start mixing from there. So let's loop a section of our song which has got the most going on, so that's as loud as the kick's going to be, which is usually the drop or the last chorus. And we've done our gain staging, so let's just double check that we have it bouncing up around -18 dBFS. It's quite low on this fader. Let's take it up a bit. So now it's about -18, and that's where it's going to remain for the rest of the mixing process. So the next stage is removing unwanted frequencies with an equalizer. So let's have a look at what's going on. Now there's nothing we really want to EQ out here, because it's got the low end thump that we want, it's got the high end tick that we want to cut through the mix. And some of these decisions, as I said in the last lesson, will only become apparent when the other elements are in. For instance, the kick might not be quite cutting through the mix enough, so we might want to boost the high end a little bit, but we can also do that in the next part of the signal flow, which would be the compression, if we wanted to compress it. So with no compression, it's quite a well-rounded sounding kick, but if we add some compression, we reduce the dynamic range and basically make the signal more like a sausage. And this can be very useful if we want a really in-your-face loud kick. But many sample packs come with their kicks already quite heavily compressed, especially if you're using something like Vengeance or Cymatics. So you wouldn't actually want to apply any compression, because you'd run the risk of completely squashing the life out of your kick, or adding distortion, as in this case. This is an extreme example, but you can hear the distortion. But if you've got a compressor with a dry wet knob, you can use this parallel compression to mix in the compressed signal with the dry signal, just to add a bit more tick and a bit more punch to that kick. Now what should the settings be? Well, it's easier if you start low with the attack, for instance, and that is the compression hitting straight away. And if we increase the attack time, that allows the uncompressed signal to get through before it's being compressed, so it keeps the transient of the kick. And similarly, you can tweak the release time as well. Start low. We can hear the distortion of that, and that's because the compression is being released straight away. So we've got this increase in the gain that we've got on the output of 10 decibels. So that is basically our kick drum being increased by 10 decibels without compression. So we'll want a longer release time than that for sure. So we can see the gain reduction is reaching 0, which is what we want. So that's no compression, and that's with compression. And then after the compression, you might want to add some frequencies. If you wanted the high ends to pop out a bit more, if you wanted that tick to be there, and the low frequencies too, you could boost, add the sub bass. But there is a danger here of actually boosting these frequencies too much, and most kicks in sample packs actually come very well processed, so it's unlikely you're going to have to do much work with the kick unless you've got a kick that you've recorded live yourself, in which case it is going to need some compression, it is going to need some EQ. We're going to leave saturation from the kick because that is more compression, but I'm going to show you how we can actually saturate the kick and the bass both together just to gel them nicely. And the next lesson is actually the bass, as that's our second of our 3 most important elements. So I will see you in the next lesson.